Chancellor Juan Salgado is an undeniable force in Chicago's education landscape. In 2017, he was tapped to lead the City Colleges of Chicago system as its chancellor, an institution serving more than 70,000 students across the city of Chicago and growing. As its leader, he's worked to increase access to students around Chicago, no matter your zip code or financial status, with programs like the STAR Scholarship. He's a family man, a community organizer at heart, and my next guest on In My Own Words. Welcome to another episode of In My Own Words. I'm your host, Corey Timms, and with me in the studio today, I have a powerhouse in the education landscape, Chancellor of the City Colleges of Chicago, and my friend, Juan Salgado. Chancellor, thanks for joining.
Hey, Corey, it's great to be here.
You know, I've been really excited about this episode. I think we met back in 2017 when I was working for Mayor Emanuel in the mayor's office. And then we got reacquainted when I went to the Obama Foundation. So you've always been somebody that I looked up in the space and I've followed your career over the course of it. And just, you're somebody that I think a lot of people should know. And so I'm really excited to have this chance to interview you today.
Yeah, I love being here because I like keeping it real. I know you're all about keeping it real.
Well, you picked the right place to come to this morning. So I like to start every episode with a lightning round of questions. And so you just tell me the first answer that comes to your head.
Okay.
Prince or Michael Jackson?
Prince, undoubtedly Prince.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Prince song?
Well, I told you before, Purple Rain, because that was my first date. Okay. So there's a lot of other reasons why I like Prince.
So you got long
I got
Prince
long
time.
Prince history.
What is your favorite Chicago restaurant?
I'll be there tonight. It's a place called Indio on 63rd Street. It's my favorite because that's where my family and I go on occasion.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of memories for us.
I got to check it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Sox or Cubs?
Sox.
I knew you were
I'm
going to say
Southside.
I knew you were going to say it. Deep dish or thin crust pizza?
Ooh, thin crust.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me
You
too.
got to keep the cheese off the body.
Who's a leader that you look up to and why?
Selfless people. Gandhi, Mandela. This guy named Jaime Escalante, a teacher in the LA schools. Selfless people. You know, it's hard for anybody to be as selfless as them, but if you can model in some way their selflessness, we can get very far as a society.
Yeah. And then last question is, what's a mantra that you live by?
Make a great day. Yeah, we have that choice every morning, what we're going to make of that day. And it really is our choice, no matter what the circumstances are. So, I make a great day every day.
See, I knew you were going to fly right through my lightning round of questions. So, as I'm sure you've seen from past episodes, I like to start every episode talking about upbringing. Now, you grew up in Blue Island in the south suburbs of Chicago, went to Dwight Eisenhower High School. How did Blue Island shape you into who you are today and ultimately the path that you've been able to blaze for yourself?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a working class community. Actually grew up just a little bit south of Blue Island, Calumet Park. Okay. And a white community that turned to a black community. Saw a lot of white flight. And that happened as I was growing up as a young man. And so, I think I always had questions of race. Yeah. And I also always had a job since I was in 7th grade. I washed dishes, I did catering, and in some of those jobs, I saw a tremendous amount of wealth. And so I had a lot of questions about race, inequality, wealth, right? And
especially like income inequality.
Yeah, because you just, I didn't grow up with that. Everybody, there were, racial issues, mostly held by the adults, not held by the young people, right? And racism that was very clear and very evident. But everybody's was about the same income, if you will. But then started to, branch out into the rest of the world, and you start to realize, man, some people live a lot better than others. And nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure that everybody has enough means.
Yeah.
That they can thrive in society.
Chicago is, and even the college suburbs, you see there's clear divide lines in terms of like income inequality, especially where you can have an area that is very affluent flow right into an area that's very disadvantaged. And you always wonder, what are the community or societal dynamics that impact that?
Yeah.
And what resources are needed to level set so that everybody can have a fair share?
As a young person, all you get is a bunch of questions coming into your mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're even afraid to ask them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're just trying to figure out how to make it through life, But those questions, they remain with you. And I've been telling, honestly, for me, they've remained with me my entire life.
I've always mentored, and it was eye-opening to me when I first started. A lot of kids, particularly that would come from the South and West Side, that would come downtown, and the amazement that they would have for being in downtown Chicago.
Yep.
But also feeling like I can be down here.
That's right.
It's okay for me to be down here.
That's right.
And so you see that they have oftentimes can't see beyond their own the confines of their community to know that this entire city is you have access to. You can, and you belong.
It's
and I
yours.
think that's so important to continue to push that message to our young people, especially.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, one of the things we have to do is what you're pointing out, they got to be there.
Yeah.
They got to get in those buildings. They got to meet people. They've got to experience not just downtown from, sort of the street looking at buildings, but they got to get in those buildings and have meaningful roles in those buildings. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I, get into. But that's why I love what I do today.
And I get
to do that.
I was gonna say you're doing that every day.
Yeah,
what you're doing.
Yeah,
and we're definitely gonna get to that.
Yeah.
So after you graduated from Eisenhower High School, you went to Moraine Valley Community College, and you got your associate's degree, which I think is also like timely considering like what you do right now over the city colleges system. What prompted you to go straight to community college as opposed to going to a 4-year school?
That's just what my family did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm raised in a family of 6. I have 3 older sisters and an older brother. They all went to community college. It was a way for 6 of us to get a higher education rather than maybe 1 or 2. We just didn't have a whole lot of resources, mm-hmm. right? So I didn't actually apply to any 4-year universities.
Really?
This is just what we did. My father I would always say, get the grades, don't worry about the money, right? I always thought maybe he had some money.
You're like, can we have both?
Why did he say don't worry about the money? My sister said, no, he said that because if you get the grades, good things will happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so I did get something like the Star Scholarship at community college. I got my community college paid for. And 2 years, debt free. Then I went on to get a bachelor's degree, mm-hmm. And was largely debt free. And went on to get a master's degree and finished largely debt free. So, I'm a real believer in what this institution, these kinds of institutions, community colleges can do, to help working families, working poor families, any family actually, mm-hmm. but especially those families that are struggling economically.
Is it a full circle moment now that you're over one of the largest community college systems in the country that you had that journey of starting a community college yourself?
I think it's really important that when you lead a place and you lead a people and you lead an institution, you have to identify with it. You have to understand the experience. I can fully understand the experience of my students in every way I lived it. I had the 11 o'clock shift where I worked till 7 in the morning and mm-hmm. I went right from work, to class.
Yeah.
And then went right home to sleep, to study, to work, to class. I mean, this is what I had to do.
Yeah.
And I see it in my students today. They are putting every bit of, resource and energy and creativity and entrepreneurship into, thriving.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when when you experience it yourself, you have appreciation for it, you have an understanding of it. It makes you a better decision maker at the end of the day. So yeah, it's full circle in a sense that, I get to serve, myself.
Yeah.
The person who I used to be, right? And I get to serve thousands and thousands of young people that were like me back in the day, and I get to tell them, that they can aspire to my role or even more, right, in society. They can aspire to anything they want to accomplish, and I'm proof positive of it. You're proof positive of it, right?
I have a similar story. I graduated from Proviso West High School, and I started at community college too. And it was twofold. One, it gave you a chance to kind of get a taste of college without necessarily having to dive into a traditional four-year system, but it also is considerably cheaper than. So I finished with, I didn't get my associates. I transferred after about a year and a half into a four-year school, but I had no debt, and I had gotten through the majority of my general ed requirements. And so, but some of my counterparts that went straight to a four-year institution were saddled with debt after those first 2 years. So you really see the community college system being a kind of a purveyor to opportunity without saddling you with some of the financial constraints.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out. I was like you. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Actually, the community college is an incredible place to explore.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the same pressure to decide right away, that you might have at a four-year university. So, that's why we're seeing an incredible increase in enrollment. Our students are starting to choose us in much larger numbers because the value proposition is better known than it's ever was known before.
You have nearly 80,000 students in enrollment, right?
Well, no, we're now at 73,000.
Okay.
But by the end of this year, we'll be very close to 80,000. That's how much we are growing as an institution. And you're going to love this. Our largest, percentage growth right now over the last 3 years, Black men, 35% increase. And the post-secondary going rate for men in general has been going down. For Black men, it's been going down. We got that going up. It's not just Black men. The second highest growing is, guess who? Latino men, right? So that's 31%. So we got, Latino and Black brothers coming back to higher education. That's good for our communities.
Yeah.
It's good for our society. That's you and me back in the day, right?
What do you attribute that to? Like
belonging. You talked about it.
I love that.
Belonging. You got to do intentional things to make sure that men, feel like it's their place too. Higher education is for us. It can benefit us. And you got to deliver goods, that are meaningful and sometimes on a shorter time frame. So the way we're built at city colleges is, you can get a shorter term credential that allows you to go get a job, and then you can continue your education or you just go to work.
Yeah.
Right? Most times when you get some success in higher education, you're going to want to get more. But if we tell some people your success point is 4 years from now, that's a long ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if we say, you know what, you can have a point of completion on a certificate in less than 6 months, or less than a year, now I've tasted success.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think we've had enough tasting of success. And this is not a generation that's going to delay gratification. Everything they get is instant. It's quick. Okay? So we got to deliver things faster.
Yeah.
We got to deliver education faster. We got to deliver it better. And we got to deliver the benefits of that education quicker so that, people will be inspired to do more of it.
I love the fact that you talked about belonging and creating spaces where, especially like Black and Latino men, given the statistic that you always see on the news around Black and Latino men for a host of things that are oftentimes tied to something negative. creating a space where they do feel like they belong and they can have access to these different opportunities. And I know for me, it was like I was a high performing student in high school, and applying to college, I was applying to a lot of the Ivy League institutions. And I had a counselor who told me that I was aiming too high. And for me, it almost kind of reverberated that message, like, you don't belong there. And I think some of that, I internalized some of that. So then, because I know I've battled it, I'm sure you've battled it, that imposter syndrome of certain spaces. And so it did kind of reverberate that. So I love that you're creating spaces where everybody feels like they belong, but especially folks that oftentimes are always othered.
Yes.
And which is unfortunate. And so I love that you're creating that type of environment.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
Right? We have to. So, and it's like even little things. You know, some of our colleges are opening up barbershops.
Which is awesome.
Okay. You know?
I might need to go and get my barber's license.
Yeah, you might need to get a bar.
Have a little side
So
business.
you go get a haircut over at Olive Harvey, you get a haircut, you know? Yeah. So, and that's a, you know, small thing.
Yeah.
But an important detail, right? You know, and so we're trying to do more and more of that. But also we're trying to support our students more. Because the other part of belonging is making sure that that human being is well cared for.
Yeah.
Right? And men and women, you know, human beings, they want to be in places where that place is telling you we love you, we care for you, we want you, you know. And it's telling you in different ways, right? And so we're being very intentional about making sure that our students are getting those messages. You know, because what you described, unfortunately, you know, higher education is built on exclusivity.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, we need to change that paradigm. It has to be built on inclusivity, not exclusivity. And that's what community colleges do. We are fully inclusive. And we're very diverse communities, and so it's a very attractive place to be, especially right now. You know, we don't, and it's not just diverse racially and, you know, ethnically. Our students come from all parts of the city. You want to get to know Chicago? Come to City Colleges of Chicago. You're going to get to know every part of Chicago just by being there, just by meeting another student, you know.
Even age as well.
Age as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, half of my students are parents. Right? So you could pick up parenting skills, you know, just by talking to your class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you went to Illinois Wesleyan and got your bachelor's in economics. And then you went on to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and got your master's in urban planning. Did you start off wanting to be an urban planner?
No.
Okay.
No. I studied economics because I said earlier, I was real interested in income inequality. And that drew me to, you know, the field of economics. And most of what I was, you know, inquiring about was, you know, how the economy actually worked, and what can be done to make it a more, you know, inclusive society, where more people could get, you know, a bite at opportunity than what we were producing as a nation right now, particularly in cities. And so I had a faculty member that said, you should really go to urban planning school, you know, learn more about how cities work. But to be real clear, even in urban planning school, my focus was always on income inequality. In fact, I did 2 years of volunteer work in East St. Louis, Illinois, down south, you know, helping build an organization with neighbors that were part of a church. And so learning the skills of community organizing, learning the skills of community development, actually putting together a neighborhood plan driven by the people from that particular neighborhood. And so that kind of, you know, honestly, I left super inspired about what's possible in terms of, you know, making change happen in your own community. If you spend enough time at a place and you dedicate enough of your, you know, life trying to make that place a better place, you can get pretty far. Yeah.
How is that tied, that experience tied into what you do now, especially starting with that, that kind of mission of being focused on income inequality to now being the chancellor of city colleges? How's that tied or influenced rather the work you're doing now?
Yeah. I think what happens, Corey, is, at least for me, you try to make the biggest impact that you can, and then you come to a realization that, you need to take on a different role in order to make a bigger impact. You need to do things over here or like you're doing here, interviewing me, getting out to all these people so that these stories can come out. So, you're just trying to find, how you can make the biggest impact with your life and your talents, right? And so that's all I've been doing is like say, okay, I'm discovering I got some gifts, I can lead places, right? And I can, envision things and build teams that can envision things, and I can make new realities, from even sometimes real difficult circumstances, right? So, for me, it's always thinking about like, am I making the biggest impact I can make on income inequality? And city colleges is like the place in Chicago, which is my city. That's the place where, I'm going to make a difference like the people in East St. Louis did over a lifetime.
You're doing it every day.
And I'm doing it every day, but I get to do it at a scale, that is beyond my imagination when I first started on this journey. But, it's incredibly rewarding. And it's rewarding when you see, young people accessing opportunity that, if not for what you're doing, if not for what we're doing at city colleges, may not happen.
Yeah. So after you finished, one of your earliest roles was a senior program officer with Citizen Information Service. Walk us through that kind of transition from grad school into that. Like what prompted you to want to go there and do that? So,
real story, right?
Real talk.
The real story is, I'm from a working class family. I didn't know a soul in Chicago. I'd gone to, you go to school, you go to graduate school, you're super excited. I was doing work in East St. Louis. I didn't know anybody in Chicago. I met this one guy, Daryl Burrows, at the National Conference for Citizen Participation. I took a train out there. I didn't have a hotel, anything. Anyway, long story short, he's like, it was really taken aback with me. So I called him, the only guy I knew in Chicago, and I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm going to have a master's degree and everything. Can you help me, find a job? Can you help me introduce me to some people? Daryl, since you took a liking to me. And he said, I'll do one better. I'll hire you. And he was the leader of Citizen Information Service. And he convinced me of something very, very important. Number one, they produce a lot of information for how people get involved, right, in their community, part of the League of Women Voters. But he said, your job isn't going to be out in the community. I'm going to teach you how to do budgets and proposals and run an organization. And so, he taught me how to be a leader of an organization. So I tell people, young people, coming out of college, the thing you need the most is a champion, a professional person like Daryl Burrows who's going to take you under your wings and is going to teach you things. It's not about the pay. I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I trusted him. He believed in me, and that can propel an entire career. You start off without that, things can get harder. Yeah. So find that person who's going to make you their person. Yeah. And that's what it did. After a little while, I was tired of being in a downtown office because that's what they were. So I got myself back into the community.
You're like, let me get to the community.
Where I really wanted to be.
It's interesting. I think enough people don't recognize the importance of, to your point, having a champion. Having somebody that will take you under their wing, will open up the door for you. And you talked about Daryl Burrows. For me, that was Anna Valencia.
Yeah.
And so I was in grad school, and I applied for the City of Chicago Mayoral Fellowship in between my first and second year. And I didn't know anybody. I was didn't know anybody in government. I had no connections. I honestly didn't even think I would get the role, because you look at the brochure, it's like all the testimonials were like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and I was like, yeah, I'm at Indiana, and I don't know that they're going to take me from a state school. And she was one of the folks that interviewed me, and I ended up getting the fellowship. And the first day, some of the staff in the mayor's office was like, I don't know what kind of impact you had on her, but she came in that consensus room and she was like, no, this is the guy. He needs to be in this program. And from that moment of me starting, she was like, okay, yeah, we're going to, she started taking me to events with her and all of this. And so she was one of the ones that really helped me propel my start. And so she's been a champion. So I love the fact that you talked about Daryl Burrows, because far too often I feel like sometimes people don't take that opportunity to reach back and pull somebody forward. And he pulled you forward, and now you're Chancellor of City Colleges.
Yeah.
You know, so that one pull propelled your entire career.
Yes, without doubt.
So you went on to the Resurrection Project, and you were programs director for 5 years. And then you went to Instituto del Progreso Latino, and you stayed there for 16 years.
16 years. So
first, for our viewers that aren't familiar with these organizations, tell them a little bit about these organizations, and then what prompted you to want to go there.
Yeah. So Resurrection is a community development entity that does organizing and community development.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I wanted to be back in the neighborhood. I wanted to be doing community development work, you know, at the most grassroots level.
Yeah.
You know, when you're working with church leaders and community leaders, where they have a big vision for the future, but you know, there's resources you got to get right in order to make that reality. And so, I was thirsty for that and needed to have that, you know, in my life. I said I had that at, you know, in the work I was doing in East St. Louis. And so I wanted to realize that work in Chicago. But I was only there for 5 years because Instituto's a special place.
Yeah.
A very
I could tell you stayed for a long time.
I stayed for a long time. It's a really special place. And I had been a volunteer there. Okay, before I became their executive director and their CEO. I was teaching citizenship classes in the evening because, you know, my mother always taught us, you know, keep yourself busy doing things that are good for society. And so if I wasn't involved in the church, I had to be doing something else, okay? And nothing against the church, but I enjoyed being at Instituto, volunteering, giving citizenship classes, helping people to become, you know, more active in their society. So Instituto is a special place, education institution, you see, that was at the very grassroots of education.
Yeah.
Which is where people are learning how to read and write in their own native language. And I understood, you know, I was like 31 when I, you know, started as their CEO. I understood I could do something really special. So I had dreams for what the, you know, what it could look like, what it could do, what it would mean if it did what, you know, I believed it could do, right? And so you got all these ideas, you got all this energy, you got this, you know, creativity, and you don't know what you don't know. So like, you know, kind of the youthful exuberance, you know, allows you to accomplish things you might not otherwise accomplish because you don't know any better. So when people would say, oh, you know, whatever, you know, I'm going to change the way workforce development is done in the entire country. This is ridiculous. It needs to look more like this and less like that. And I will tell you, Instituto had a big role nationally in changing the way we do business in the workforce development field. You know, I didn't realize how big a change till later. You know, I actually got that MacArthur Fellowship. One of the reasons why I got the MacArthur Fellowship is because we had actually catalyzed through a local organization that was barely making enough resources to pay my staff.
Yeah.
We had catalyzed a sea change in the way workforce development was done in the United States of America. So you can actually make a big change from a small place, right? And so I was just enjoying it so much. That's why I was there for 16 years. Every day was fun. It was hard, but every day was fun, meeting people, making things happen. And also, you get to be a part of community development in Chicago. So when you're running an organization like Instituto, as hard as it is to do that, you become in fellowship with so many other leaders from across the city that are doing similar work. And you support each other, and there's this level of solidarity and sharing. And so, it gave me a chance to get to know the city from the ground up, if you will. And that's been invaluable, right? I look at the city so much differently than most people because I grew up at the ground level, in these organizations, working in community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched on it. You said you were 31 when you assumed the role of CEO. I mean, that's a young guy, period. And so being a 31-year-old now at the helm of an organization, one, how do you handle that responsibility? And two, how did you craft where you wanted to take the organization? I know you talked about having some dreams about where the organization could go, but how did you really kind of build your strategy around this is my 5-10-year plan or 16-year plan of where I want to take the organization?
Yeah, you get a lot of help.
Yeah.
You just get a lot of help. Whether real good board members, real good staff members. There's a gentleman that, been my mentor too, a guy named Gabe Nahida, who just wise man. 20 years older than me. And every time I hit a frustration point, I call him up and, he'd talk me off a ledge, or he'd help me think through something a little bit differently. So, the one thing you have to do is you have to surround yourself with good people. You have to communicate your challenges and opportunities. You got to fully share your dreams. It's incredible how many people will coalesce around a human being that wants to accomplish something profoundly important, and they'll help you, right? But you got to look for it. You got to ask for it. You got to want it. You got to engage with it. So, I certainly what I learned the most in those 16 years is, the organization and I mostly as a leader was highly reliant, on a whole host of people. And we came through for each other. And I think about moments like right now.
Yeah.
The thing that we have to think about the most is how are we coming through for each other? How am I coming through for you today? Who am I coming through for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're actually in that mindset, you'll be thinking about how you're coming through for the person you interact with, right? And they'll be thinking about how they're coming through for you. And at the end of the day, we're going to see ourselves through these hard times. It's hard times right now.
Yeah.
We've got pressures on families and pressures on communities and pressures on local governments, and I've lived through those pressures. I was a 31-year-old leader of a not-for-profit. Every morning, I had to worry about whether I had enough money to pay the bills. 16 years of waking up every morning, looking at the checkbook and wondering how you're going to feed the family, so to speak, right? But I learned a valuable lesson. We always had enough because we were always together, okay? And so I think about those moments and the life lessons that they taught me is really, really important. But I had to leave, 16 years, you can't spend a lifetime in a single place. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you, did you ever feel a sense of imposter syndrome? I mean, you're a young person and you are stepping into rooms, I'm assuming with other organizational leaders that are probably much more your senior or, government officials, elected officials. Like, did you ever feel a sense of imposter syndrome, like stepping into those spaces as a young 31-year-old?
All the time. You know, it might surprise people. I feel imposter syndrome today.
Really?
At times. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a healthy thing in some respects, you know. I think that people that walk into a place and, you know, automatically think that, you know, they belong aren't necessarily as, you know, I would say as respectful to the environment, you know. You're walking into a place that's new to you.
Yeah.
And anything that's new to you, you know, should engender some sense of nervousness, you know, some sense of, you know, so I don't know if it's imposter syndrome that I feel, you know, in the same way, because I think when you're younger, there's more lack of self-confidence.
Yeah.
That's kind of mixed in with just the newness, right? But I think we do need to be respectful when we're walking into new situations, new environments. You know, we need to understand that we don't know as much as we think we know.
Yep.
I know people walking in to my community thinking they know everything. But imposter syndrome at all. They could use some imposter syndrome, you know what I mean? To help them to relate better in the moment, to help them to be more respectful of the place and the people and the customs and the traditions and, you know, and so I don't think it's you know, and maybe I don't title it anymore imposter syndrome, but I like to walk into new places and new situations with a learning stance. You know,
a lot of young people that I talk to are always surprised to hear like these leaders like yourself that walk into spaces and, you know, maybe it's an imposter syndrome, maybe it is like a learning stance, because I think that the assumption is once you hit a certain point in your career, you know everything, right? You're walking into these spaces and you just take command. And I tell people all the time, for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned is to be an active listener. Yeah. Going into spaces and recognizing, let me hear what everybody thinks. Let me kind of learn the lay of the land before I start trying to infuse all of my ideas. Not enough people do that.
Completely agree with you on that. Yeah, you miss out.
You do.
If you're not in that listening mode, you're actually going to miss out on some valuable information. Yeah, perspective.
When you think back on your time at Instituto, what do you think were some of your biggest accomplishments?
Yeah. So, well, I mentioned one before. We blazed the trail in the workforce arena. You know, quite frankly, we did things that, you know, weren't being done on a national level. We got the attention of philanthropic communities. We worked with national organizations like the National Skills Coalition and Unidos US and the Urban League and others to change policy, quite frankly, to look more at career pathways, to understand that, you know, people even at the lowest literacy levels, if you actually accelerate their learning along a contextualized pathway, you know, they can go from, you know, barely being able to read and write in the English language to become registered nurses and, you know, licensed practical nurses, or they can get into the field of manufacturing, or
isn't that amazing?
Isn't amazing, right? So like, there's no limit, right? So you starts to change the mindset of, you know, what's going on, you know, in the environment. So, but you know, I think and then, you know, I ran a couple schools. I decided to, you know, open up an alternative school for out of school young people, and we were the early adopters of restorative justice practices. You know, I had kids from 3 or 4 different gangs come into a singular building, not a single security guard.
Wow.
I took my limited resources and I put it into counselors, environment, and advisors. We ran peace circles. So anytime there was any conflict, you know, this is back, you know, long before. This is when CPS was doing all that punitive, you know, stuff that was, you know, causing a very high dropout rate in our public schools. Well, I was taking those kids that they were pushing out, and I was bringing them into my school, and I was saying, you know what? We trust you. But hey, we don't put up with conflict. Yeah. So any level of conflict, that's going to require you to enter into a protocol, a peace circle, to resolve that conflict, to repair that situation. And you're going to have to talk about what you need to do to repair it. And so we're learning life skills and coping skills and, how to get along. And, it was one of the hardest things we've done. And yeah, we lost 6 kids once to gun violence in a matter of 9 months. Wow. Okay. During that particular journey, maybe a little longer, maybe a year. But we had things in place, to support our students from a human development standpoint. So, this is just like rich, deep work in community, right? That, by the way, gives me incredible perspective, for the work that I'm doing, today, right? I see some of those young people that were in that school today on the streets with their families. They're thriving.
That's got to be full circle for you.
It's like, I'll see them at the grocery store, you know what I mean? And that, that delicate life is still here with us. And the delicate lives that, they're parenting, are the better for it as well. And so I think we have to just keep doing that meaningful work. And we got to trust in young people. What I learned.
Absolutely.
If the message we tell our young people is we don't trust you, right? I think they're not going to rise to that occasion. We didn't give them an occasion to rise to. We got to believe in them. We got to trust them.
That's a word. We didn't give them an occasion to rise to. So, and actually probably the perfect segue to what you're doing now, because in 2017, you were tapped to be Chancellor of City Colleges of Chicago. First, walk us through, because obviously I want to know what prompted you to want to decide to do it, but walk us through how you even got the call. Was this like Mayor Emanuel just called you randomly, like, hey, I want you to come run City Colleges? Or walk us through the process.
So you had to apply. I applied 2 days before the deadline. Imposter syndrome in some respects, you know what I mean? I kept telling people,
like, can I do this?
Right. Yeah. Can I do this? Right. And so I got convinced that I should apply. The board was down to 3 people. I was one of them. And I felt very confident that I could do this job. Part of the confidence came from the many people who encouraged me to apply, who said, we're watching what you're doing. City Colleges, at the end of the day, needs to be rooted in community. I was rooted in community. It needs to be workforce oriented. It is higher education, but man, we got to make sure that the people that are coming through our doors
have something to go to.
Yeah. And it's meaningful and it leads to real good careers, right? I can fundraise and do all of the nuts and bolts things that you need to be doing. And I know Chicago. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so all those things encourage people to say, you should do this. But look, I wasn't chosen. It's a funny story about this is, City Colleges was going through a terrible financial crisis.
I remember.
At the time. So I got, there was a news article on like Monday. And I'm waiting to get a call, maybe not, who knows, right? And on Monday, there's a news article. City Colleges downgraded 4 notches, put on credit watch negative. They're running out of money, right?
At that moment where you like, do I really want this still?
Well, yeah. So then 2 days later, that's when I get the call. And, I jokingly said, I said, are you calling me because, I'm your guy? Or is it because everybody else said no? As a joke. But the reality is there's no better time for a leader of a not-for-profit to run an institution than when it's going through financial hard times. Because here's the thing that I saw that maybe somebody else with a different lens didn't see, right? abundance.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, the bank account was low. Yeah, there's a financial crisis, but I'm coming from a nonprofit. I'm coming to city colleges. I've never worked with more resources. So while people were saying we don't have resources,
you're looking at them like, this is plentiful.
This is more resources than I've ever had. So it's all a matter of perspective, right? I said, could you imagine what we could do with this? And they're like, this is like the least resources we've had in a long time. I understand that, but it's a lot. So that mindset, has served me very well.
Yeah.
Look, it's true. Community colleges don't actually get as much resource as four-year public universities.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Or we don't get as many resources as, private, universities that have these big endowments and everything else. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to try to change that equation. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make the most of every resource that we do have. Because when you actually do that, people start to notice that. And then they're more willing to invest in what you're doing because you've taken care of your, business, if you will. And we've been taking care of our business, at City Colleges of Chicago. And so I'm really proud of it, Corey, 8.5 years into it, financially we're in a really good spot. Enrollment-wise, we're growing. The brand is getting stronger. And more importantly, in our communities, our people are understanding that this is the place where you go if you really want to be supported, if you really want to be cared for, if you really want to grow economically, if you really want to do that in a way that doesn't, straddle you with a whole bunch of debt. So people are truly understanding, and that's why we're getting all of the, enrollment that we're getting and the outcomes that we're getting and the financial support that we're getting. So, I made the right decision for sure.
When you stepped into the role, I know you said that they were going through dire financial constraints. So I'm sure that influenced the next question I'm about to ask. But how did you determine what you wanted to prioritize stepping into the role with kind of changing the system and updating it and, just making it what you wanted it to see?
Yeah. So I had a lot of ideas. That's why I applied. But the number one idea that I had was that Chicago public schools and city colleges of Chicago should be like a marriage. Like my wife and I, we go to bed every night, we get up every morning, and 24 hours a day, what we're thinking about is what's best for the children, what's best for the family. And unfortunately, we had a situation where CPS and city colleges, we're working together in that way. And you could make a lot of good happen, if you put your egos aside, if you work together. So Janice Jackson to start with, and then every successive CEO that I've worked with at the public schools has worked with me on this partnership that we have. And we have we went from sort of, what I might describe as, years ago, the CPS and CCC used to blame each other all the time for lack of educational outcomes because neither of them were getting good outcomes. And it was always somebody else's fault, not our own, right? To what Mayor Emanuel was attempting to do, which is force them to work together. It's hard to force anybody to work together. To what I came in to do, which is say, no, this has to be a partnership that we're fully immersed in. There's no elected official going to force us to do that, in a way that's going to create abundant opportunity. So we've been on that journey, by the way, and the kind of results we're getting now are phenomenal. Do you know we turned dual credit, dual enrollment. We now have close to 10,000 CPS students getting college credit, while they're in high school. It's amazing, right? And when I started, it was like 3,000. We got like 10,000 now, okay? But here's the kicker. We got 800 plus that are getting 15 credits or more before they graduate, a full semester. And when you look at the 15 credits or more, Black students are overrepresented among the number of students getting 15 credits or more by 5 percentage points.
Wow.
In this city on education-related stuff, Black students are never overrepresented. Why are they overrepresented in this value-added work that we're doing with CPS? Because we intentionally planned it that way. Because we decided we needed to go in these smaller schools. Yeah. We needed to put certain kind of resources. We needed to put certain kind of attention. And so, to me, it makes me proud to be able to say, we built a marriage, an enduring marriage between the city colleges and the CPS that is going to endure now forever, by the way, because there's no way to unwind this. There's just too much value that's being had. Every successive mayor that has come in, whether it was Mayor Lightfoot or Mayor Brandon Johnson, they're looking at this saying, wow, what a treasure. Something that we have to preserve. Every CEO, that has come into the public schools, has just embraced it, immediately. So it's that kind of thing, that really excites me. Our penetration with the employer community, we've rebranded this institution in the eyes of employers throughout the city of Chicago, in a number of different industries. They are now hiring from us, more than they ever have, right? That's amazing. And that's proof of the pudding. That goes back to what you're talking about. That, we need to make sure that every young person in every community, and every adult, by the fact is, many of our students are not young kids in CPS. They're parents, they're reskilling workers, but a human being in the city of Chicago should be able to look out at the abundant opportunities that exist in the city and actually feel it's for them. Feel it's for them. Yeah. Like that downtown office, that's for me. That paramedic job, that's for me. That nursing job, that's for me. And I think we have increasingly, and how does that happen? It happens when those employers actually make it for them by opening up their doors. There's a young man from the west side of the city that came to us. This is some time ago. I'm 8.5 years there. Must have been 2 years in my tenure. We built a partnership with Accenture. Accenture starts hiring our people. Never hired our people before. Never hired associate's degree earners. They decided to hire people. They hired this gentleman from the west side. Yeah. Okay. He does really well. Gets a full-time job after an apprenticeship. Right. 4 years into it, gets a promotion. We asked him to come speak. The day before he came to speak, he closed on a house on the west side of the city.
That's amazing.
Okay. Became a homeowner, right? So from city college student to homeowner on the west side in a 5-year period, but more importantly, he's out telling young people what his path has been. So now you got more young people believing, right, that they can do this. And so, that's what we need to produce more. That's what I'm proudest of when I see, these young people thriving out in our city, making a name for themselves, adding value to companies and, schools and, the places where they work.
You also mentioned the STAR Scholarship.
Yeah.
And I know we talked earlier in the show about it being a barrier, like financially, there's some huge barriers to accessing higher education. And so can you talk a little bit about the STAR Scholarship and some of the impact that it's had?
Absolutely phenomenal. So here's the thing. If you get a B average at Chicago Public Schools, community college is completely free to you. Okay? And we all know that, that our students struggle with finances. So when you can tell a ninth grader as they're going in to high school, all you got to do, it's kind of like what my dad said, all you got to do is get the grades. Yeah. Don't worry about the money, okay? And so that's what we're saying to our young people. Get the grades, get the B average, then you don't have to worry about the money. You not only do we cover the tuition, we cover the books, we cover transportation, so you're really getting, and you get 3 years to complete a 2-year degree. And then we've got close to 30 transfer partners that discount tuition or provide scholarships if you want to go on to your 4-year university. That's awesome. So your path and my path, right? We've just encoded it, and this was started by Mayor Rahm Emanuel, right? But now we've up to 20,000 students have become STAR Scholars since the exception 10 years ago. Every year, we get our highest class of students taking the STAR Scholarship, right? So it's just gone up and up and up and up. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know why a student that, look, if you're eligible for the STAR Scholarship, you should take it. You should take it. Unless four-year university gave you a full ride for 4 years, it's a pretty doggone good deal, and students are thriving as a result of it.
So you've talked about some of the amazing accomplishments that you've had, from workforce development to financial access. What have been some of your biggest challenges that you've had in the role?
Yeah.
And then how have you overcome them?
Yeah. So I talked earlier, the finances early on was a big challenge. And I had to do really tough things. I sold our downtown headquarters.
Yeah.
I had to lay off 130 people, okay, within my first 30 days. Not something you want to do.
Yeah.
But in situations like that, something you have to do to stabilize, the institution as a whole. But just as we were coming out of that, we confronted a global pandemic, okay? And, we did extremely well in serving our students during the global pandemic.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that I think is just been a challenge that we have overcome, is there used to be a stigma attached to community college students. Somehow the world, thought that you're in community college because you couldn't make it anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a fallback, all right? This is no fallback, right?
It's a jump start.
This is a jump start. This is a place of choice.
Yeah.
The talented students that we have, are up to par with anybody, and so we have changed the thought process as it relates to City Colleges of Chicago, City Colleges students. So much so now, by the way, that our four-year universities are giving us guaranteed admissions agreements to engineering programs. Our students can go straight from City Colleges to the Granger School of Engineering at UIUC.
Wow.
Top engineering program in the country. And when they're getting there, they're doing extremely well. All right? So our if you will, people talk about that as brand, right? I talk about it as, how do you think about our students and the talent that they have and the contributions that they can make? And that has shifted, dramatically in the landscape. And you could see the evidence of it by the number of companies that are working with us, the number of institutions that are tapping into our students, and by the way, the number of students that are coming to City Colleges of Chicago.
Yeah. What do you still hope to, having had all of the success over the last 8 years, what do you still hope to accomplish going forward?
Yeah. This next year, 4-year period, is going to be another challenge, just as we're coming up through the pandemic. We're fully recovered, by the way, from the pandemic. Enrollment had dropped, now we're way past that. But this 4-year period, so, I'm going to lead a reimagining of community colleges in the United States of America. And so what does that mean? That means not just that we are, the top-notch, most consequential institution in local economy.
Yeah.
Which, I can tell you today, we are the most consequential institution in the local economy of Chicago. We drive towards more job opportunities, than most institutions, because we can hit more job categories than most institutions. We can reach more populace than most institutions, and we can go from the top engineering programs to helping someone get a job as a forklift driver. So we can flex, tremendously.
Across industry.
Across industry. We can flex across community. We can press across the diversity of age and race, and income. And so we're the most consequential in terms of the economy and the growth of the local economy. But you know what? We are going to have unrivaled student supports like you've never seen before. So, give you a good example that we're going to be rolling out in the next month. We're going to eliminate food insecurity among college students at City Colleges of Chicago. No longer an issue.
Wow.
You're going to walk into our colleges and we're going to have healthy markets with healthy food that you could take home with you. If you want a meal, you need a meal because you're a food insecure student, you're going to walk in, we're going to hand you a meal that you can heat up on the spot and have a meal. If you have family members, and you're a food insecure student, you don't have time, you're a college student. You're working, you're coming to school.
Yeah.
When are you going to go shopping? When are you going to cook? Right? No. You're going to take whatever you need, 3 meals, 4 meals, in a bag, home with you.
That's awesome.
So you could feed that family. Do you understand? Because if we can fully support our students, mental health, right now, we have invested so much in mental health in our campuses that we don't have waiting lists, and we're not going to have waiting lists. Do you understand? If our students need mental health resources, we're going to add mental health resources. What we're going to do during this time period where the federal government is pulling back is we're going to fill the void.
Yeah.
And we're going to show that a community college, can be a center of student support that helps them at this critical time, that, leads to a lifetime of opportunity. See, if we do this right, you'll only need food supports for a defined period of time because you'll have access to the economy.
Absolutely.
Full access to the economy.
That's really like wraparound support. That's amazing.
That's wraparound support. So we're going to define what the role. You say, well, do community college have to do this? I believe we do. If we're going to have the full value proposition and the full, set of outcomes.
Yeah.
That we need to have. We need to fully support, our students. So we're looking at, ideas around housing. I don't have those concrete right now, but I got a lot of them in my mind. There will not be a community college system in the country that does more to support their students than City Colleges of Chicago. Next 4 years, no matter what Trump does.
I love that. You sit on several high-powered boards: Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, the Obama Foundation. You're recently the chair of the MacArthur Foundation, which is amazing. By the way. Let me say. How important has representation for you been on some of these boards, particularly those that are grant-making institutions? Being a Latino man that's had so many opportunities where you've impacted communities, how important has representation been for you in those spaces?
I think it's important to recognize that people are asking you to be on the board to bring that perspective. You bring your lived experience.
Yeah.
And, my lived experiences as a, Mexican American on the south side of Chicago, son of a steel worker, right? That's my experience. That's what I can bring to the table. So I don't have to pretend to be anybody else than who I am. And usually, if you're getting the right kind of invitations, right, people aren't asking you to pretend.
Yeah.
Okay? If you get a feeling that they are, then, maybe you should decline. Okay? At the end of the day. But you also can't be there to only offer that perspective. I don't join a board to be the Latino on the board.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, let me speak for all Latinos.
It's like, and if somebody's asking me to be the Latino or a couple Latinos or, even a handful of Latinos to be the Latino perspective, no. I got my lived experience. It's very diverse. It's often very different than the other Latinos on the board. And that's true with African Americans or anybody else, so and that's what makes it very rich.
Yeah.
Right. That's what makes it very rich. And so, I think the thing that served me well is just, be who you are, offer what you're prepared to offer.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and everybody's, if you will, you're never the smartest person in the room, nor are you trying to be the smartest person in the room. That person doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
I mean, from my book, right? Boards, like many things, they function the best when the people on those boards function as a team.
Yeah.
And they're really drawing from, the offering and the expertise, and the wisdom and the knowledge of all of the members of the body. You know what I mean? And so I feel very privileged because I've been able to be on boards that have been well-governed boards. The Obama Foundation board has, a lot of experienced people, extremely well-governed, well-led by Valerie. MacArthur board, is incredible. Martha Minow was our chair. And every one of those members, I mean, I feel very privileged because you learn, quite a bit, and others learn from you, quite a bit as well.
We've talked a lot about your life, about your career. When you look back over your career, what do you want your legacy to be?
That's a hard one. I'll tell you why. I'm not trying to build a legacy. I'm trying to make impact.
Yeah.
So and sometimes I think, it's hard to make impact when you're thinking about legacy. Maybe there'll be a moment for that, right? But right now, I'm just zeroed in on what kind of impact, I do like, the idea that you can remake the image, right, of an institution by the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Remake the value proposition, to something that it can be, if you will, in the future. And so I think about that not just at city colleges, but, think about the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we are, we got all the makings, right? And people love to come here, right? And, to be better branded than we are right now, generally. You know what I mean? And so what does that mean? That just means that it starts with us.
Yeah.
That just means that we got to invest in each other more, so that, we can be, every day more and more, representatives, if you will, of our city, and making sure that our city is properly, branded to the world. I hate it when people talk down about Chicago.
Same.
It just kills me. I hate it when they talk down about our leaders. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's hard to lead. It's hard to govern. And yet look how strong this city is.
Absolutely.
And we got a lot of things to work on. But that's the way I'm looking at city colleges. Is Chicago City College, we got a lot of things to work on. There's I can rattle off all the things that I know we could do better. We push each other every single day, right? But I also talk about all the good things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, because you can work on the growth opportunities you have, right? But why you could be a pride for people, and yeah.
What advice do you give to young people, especially that look at you and what you've done, and they want to aspire to do what you're doing one day? What advice would you give to them?
Oh man, you have to. These are all building blocks. Okay, you have to do an extremely good job at what you're doing today. Yes, you want to look, to the future, right? But the best pathway to a high impact future is a high impact present day. So it's really about every single day and every single moment. I talked to you about 16 years at the not-for-profit. There were many days when at Instituto, everything could have fallen apart, because it's very delicate. When you're leading any institution, your decisions are consequential.
Yeah.
What your effort is consequential. If I didn't get up that morning and write that proposal, if I didn't, spend that evening with that donor, if I didn't, right, maybe we wouldn't have gotten that extra 20,000. Maybe we wouldn't have gotten that extra 100,000. Maybe that would have, so like, it's what I did every single day.
Yeah.
And so you got to deliver. And you got to deliver. 8.5 years at City Colleges, I think I've done very well. Guess what? Tomorrow, I got to do just as well or better.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no resting on your laurels, right?
You're continuing to raise the bar for yourself.
You continue to raise the bar for yourself, and you continue to deliver. And when you do that, and then I think the second thing is right relationships.
Absolutely.
It's a small city, and you build a reputation, and so be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Treat people with utmost respect. Be helpful in every instance that you can. Be helpful to others. Collaborate. Collaboration is much better than competition. And if you're going to compete, do it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Do it in a fair way.
Yeah.
Do it in an honest way. And so because anything else is going to catch up to you. It always has. I know leaders that took shortcuts, and you could see the shortcuts that they took.
Absolutely.
And you know what? It fizzled out.
It never works out.
It never works out. Yeah. Shortcuts don't work out. Yep.
Then my last question is, who is Juan Salgado in your own words?
I was part of the leadership program, and so I'll use the words that my colleagues used, which I thought, you guys, I kind of like it. Humble catalyst.
A humble cactus.
A humble catalyst. I take pride in, making sure that I keep my feet to the ground all the time, and I understand that, I'm no more important, no more better, than anybody else. Humility is really important. I was taught that in my family.
You can tell by your overall demeanor.
But I think you can be very accomplished, and you could be an incredible catalyst while holding on to humility, right? And I think it's actually an important element of being a catalyst.
Yeah.
To always, understand your important place in the world. My place in the world is incredibly important, but it's no more important than yours. Okay. And so I think if I could be a catalyst for many things, and continue to be known as a humble human being, I would be very satisfied.
Well, let me say, on behalf of myself, but the city of Chicago, one, thank you for all that you do. You've been somebody that, from afar, I've looked up to, that your background, your experience, but also your heart for the work. And I think it's especially evidenced throughout this interview that you truly have a heart for people. You truly have a heart for community. You truly have a heart for shaping outcomes for our young people. And I think that should be celebrated. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the show. So I just wanted to thank you for being an inspiration to so many other people.
Yeah, well, look, I want to thank you for creating this platform. I think that's the vision that, the next generation has, that my generation, is still trying to understand.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we could do all the, important work in the world, but if people don't know about it, and so the fact that you're getting the word out, the fact that you're investing this time and, making sure that your audience gets the kind of information that they're getting. I want to thank you for that vision. And you're making me think about, what I could be doing, inspired by what you're doing. So we'll have some conversations about that later.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining In My Own Words.
Yep.
This episode of In My Own Words was brought to you by Ascension FBO Network. Ascension is proud to serve the Chicagoland area by creating career pathways in aviation and investing in communities where we live and work. Because when our community takes off, we all rise together. This episode of In My Own Words is brought to you by TIM Strategies, a Chicago-based, full-service public affairs firm delivering solutions that are results-driven and people-focused. With over a decade of experience, their expertise spans crisis management, government affairs, grassroots community engagement, strategic communications, and political strategy. Whether you're in the private, public, nonprofit, or political realm, TIM Strategies creates solutions that move communities forward.